Hey guys, what's going on? John here, back with another episode of Talking Ball, and today we are going to be looking at another group of players in our Four to Look For series, detailing 2016 collegiate players that will be entering most likely the 2017 NFL Draft. Now, before I get into today's episode, let me remind you that our 50 videos in 50 days challenge is ongoing, and that if you subscribe, you will be able to get our great daily sports content delivered right to your inbox. So now, getting into today's episode, like I mentioned, we are doing our Four to Look For series, and today we are looking at cornerbacks. And this past year, it was a pretty decent cornerback class. You had first-rounders Eli Apple, Vernon Hargreaves, Jalen Ramsey, Artie Burns. You also had William Jackson. I don't think I'm forgetting anyone else there in the first-round category of corners. And you also had pretty good depth with some nice players like Eric Murray and Xavier Howard and Zach Sanchez. So you had some really good depth and position play at the top. Although, in my opinion, the top of the draft with Eli Apple and Vernon Hargreaves, I consider Jalen Ramsey more to be a safety, even though he will play corner at Jacksonville. The top of the draft didn't have that elite Patrick Peterson type of player that we had seen in cornerback classes past, where you have one really, really exceptional talent there. It was more of a mix of a bunch of guys that were all pretty damn good at the position. And this year, I think will be a little different. I think you will see a clear top corner emerge from this class, and in my opinion, that's going to be Desmond King from Iowa. And King was a guy who, if he had stayed, or if he had come out rather, instead of staying at Iowa, if he had come out for the NFL draft, he probably would have been a first-round pick, and he probably would have been, mid to late first-round type of talent. Playing at Iowa, he has some experience there. He is a guy who is an aggressive ball-hawking CB, and he reads routes, and he attacks the ball right away. You see that jump off on the film. He has had a lot of interceptions over the past few years. Of playing in 3 years, he has accumulated 11 total interceptions, including 8 last year. He had a return for touchdown. He's also had 26 pass deflections in his 3 years at Iowa, and now going into his senior year, he's definitely going to build on that number a little bit. Of course, opposing quarterbacks won't really be throwing his way too much because he is such a great defender, but he will definitely build on that number. He is a guy who's very good in run support, but he could definitely get stronger from what I've seen. There are times when receivers or tight ends have taken him out of the play, or where he couldn't finish a tackle on a running back. He has above average athleticism, not an elite athlete, but still good enough to get the job done, certainly. And he will definitely need to be cleaner technically and gamble a little less, or not even gamble less, but just gamble smarter and know when to take a risk and when not to take a risk. He's also, another pro of his is that he's experienced in both zone and man coverage, so he's a guy who can do a lot of things for you right away. I think he will be a top 10 pick, barring injury, after his senior year. And my pro comparison for him is kind of a poor man's Tyrann Mathieu, that he can play inside corner, outside corner, safety a little bit. He can do it all, I believe, and I think he's not as athletic and twitched up as Tyrann Mathieu is, but he has that same aggression, he has that same mentality and playing type. And he also returns punts like Mathieu did. Moving on to another corner I have listed that also stayed in school instead of coming out and wanted to play out his senior year was Tre'Davious White from LSU. And LSU has a long history of putting out not just great defensive players, but also some pretty good cornerbacks too. Patrick Peterson, of course, Morris Claiborne, who hasn't exactly panned out, but he was still a high draft pick to the Cowboys. And White will probably be another high-round draft pick corner from LSU. He's talented as all hell, but he's a definite work in progress in terms of his technique. He's a tall corner, rangy guy, very long arms, and he's exactly what you want for press coverage. I haven't, obviously none of these guys have been measured out yet. They haven't gone through official testing, like at a combine or anything. But just looking at his arm length on tape is absurd. He looks like he would have some of the longest arms for any corner in the NFL, I think, once he comes in as a rookie. He has good speed, and he flips his hips very easily, but he definitely needs to eliminate extra and false steps. You do see a lot of times where he will be out of position because of this, and obviously at the NFL level, he's going to have to clean that up. Otherwise, he will be abused by experienced wide receivers. Last year, he did not have any interceptions playing in 11 games. He did have 5 pass deflections, and he had 4 interceptions in the past 2 years combined. A total of 18 pass deflections in his 3 years at Louisiana State. And he's also done some punt returns as well. He's had 2 touchdowns in that facet. So he does a bunch of different things for you there. And he measured out at LSU at 5'11", but I wouldn't be surprised if he's grown a little bit there. He's definitely got the look of a bigger corner to him. He needs to be a little less handsy, and he will probably play with too much cushion from time to time. He definitely needs to use that length, use his ability to stick with other wide receivers to eliminate passes in their direction rather than just giving them cushion and trying to break on the ball. And my final point here is that he definitely needs to get stronger. He was too easily washed out of place by even wide receivers. So most college corners need to get stronger, but White in particular needs to. And my pro comp for him was Aqib Talib. Again, 2 rangy, long cover guys, and Talib was very raw coming out of Kansas, and White is kind of similar. He has a lot of potential, and I could see him as a first-round pick in 2017. Next guy on my list is hailing also from the SEC and from a perennial powerhouse Alabama, and that is Marlon Humphrey, a guy who made big strides last year, who got into the starting lineup after a few guys left. He kind of took control of the number 2 corner spot next to Cyrus Jones, who's now a New England Patriot. And in his freshman year, redshirt freshman, I should say, he had 3 interceptions and 8 pass deflections, so not bad for his first time playing at the collegiate level. Humphrey is a guy who has smooth athleticism, and he very rarely allows receivers to get behind him. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but like I said, he's very smooth. He's got good agility. He's able to keep up with wide receivers, and he can play off and press man coverage. Sticks close to his man, but he will definitely need to learn to play the ball a little more. You don't see him being too aggressive, going for the ball all the time. I'd like to see him try and do that a little more. He'd get even more interceptions than he has already, and he definitely needs to make better decisions and be more aware. But he made a lot of mistakes as a redshirt freshman, and that's kind of to be expected. Playing at Alabama, playing top level competition, and in particular, I noted a play against Ole Miss he had where he allowed Cody Core to score on him for a long touchdown after he got mixed up with I believe I think it was a double move, or he believed that he was covering the short man of the field, the guy closer to the quarterback, where the safety was taking Core, and that didn't happen, so he was burned for a pretty bad touchdown there. Still some things he'll need to work on, of course. He'll over-pursue, he'll miss tackles, and in my mind, if he wants to be a top-level draft pick, he will need to truly separate himself in that very, very talented Alabama defense, especially that front 7, with guys like Jonathan Allen and Tim Williams. Some great NFL caliber talent there. And Alabama, they've had some busts at cornerback recently with D. Milner and, Dre Kirkpatrick off the top of my head, guys that haven't really panned out. My pro comparison for Marlon Humphrey would be Robert Alford, who's now with the Atlanta Falcons. He's a corner who came out of southeastern Louisiana and was very raw. He was a smooth athlete like Humphrey is. And it took some time before he established himself as a pretty solid number 2 option next to Desmond Trufant there in Atlanta, and I think that Humphrey could definitely be at worst a number 2 option for a team, and at best could develop into a top-flight corner. And now my final corner here to look at is another SEC guy, and a familiar school for corners again, in Jalen Tabor from Florida. Now Tabor, he played with Vernon Hargraves and Brian Poole this past year, and he wasn't really used as a conventional corner in any facet. He played kind of a rover type of role, where he was safety some plays, a linebacker other plays, a corner, nickel, all types of different things. And the thing that I like about watching him play is that he was constantly around the ball, and he plays with pretty good instincts fairly consistently. He's a guy who you don't really see him out of position, and even if he is out of position, he works hard to get himself back in the play very, very quickly. And he definitely wasn't overshadowed, I'd say, by Hargreaves and Poole, even though he played a different role than them. He still showed that he's a supremely talented guy. In his sophomore year, he had 4 interceptions and returned 2 of them for touchdowns, so clearly he has a nose for the ball. Had 14 pass deflections, 8 the year before, so he has a lot of talent, clearly. One thing about Tabor, though, is that he's not yet comfortable playing as a typical outside corner because they used him as that rover role, so he will, of course, have to adjust to that in his junior year. He worked inside at nickel a little more than outside, I'd say. He has a slim body type, and he'll definitely need to add weight. He's got a very thin frame overall, very kind of long and rangy, but still very thin. He'll definitely need to add weight to hold up at the NFL level. But he is an aggressive player, and he's a willing take-on tackler, so you like that a lot about him. My pro comp for him is Byron Jones, who is now playing safety for the Dallas Cowboys, who was drafted as a corner from UConn. And Tabor's that same kind of multifaceted, versatile defensive player who can do a lot of different things for a defense, and he will be definitely welcome to any NFL team that drafts him. I could see him going first or second round type of range next year. So there you go, guys. Those are my 4 cornerbacks to look for in this coming college football season. Let me know what you think, if you agree or if you disagree, and if there are any other players you're looking for or any other position groups that you want to see me detail in future 4 to look for episodes. Thanks for watching, guys.